our next session. Again, a super interesting topic on the topic Truth in the Age of Synthetics, addressing deepfakes through policies and technologies. We have four lovely speakers joining us here today to talk to us about this topic. So please put your hands together and welcome our first speaker. We have Mr. Bharat Gupta, the founder of ToBe. Can we have a clap in the house? Yes. We also have Ms. Pallavi Smriti, the head of content regulation at Meta. Can we have a round of applause, audience? Yes. We also have Dr. Pronab Mohanty, Director General of Police, Karnataka State Police. A warm welcome to sir as well, yes. We also have Mr. Sivashankar Selvarajan, the co-founder and CTO Neural Defend, joining us on the stage. Some claps in the house for sir as he comes up. And taking this conversation forward, we have Mr. Arjun Sinha, the partner, AP and partners, talking to us today. Can we have a big clap once again for all of them on the stage, please? Yes? And over to Mr. Arjun to take over the conversation forward.
Thank you, everyone. Am I audible? Yeah, great. I think we have a very interesting panel, and we have very, very interesting panelists. We've spent a little bit of time today and yesterday in discussing some of the issues. So I hope this is interesting for you, especially in the run-up to the India AI Summit happening, which is the whole question of how AI impacts information and the information environment that we live in. The way we thought we'll sort of go around this is we'll do broadly two or three large themes, and we'll discuss it, and then maybe open it up to the house for a couple of questions. So the first one actually that I wanted to ask, and ask all panelists because they come with diverse experience, is the basic fundamental question of, do you think, since we're talking about truth in the age of synthetics, is AI really looking to create new harms, or are we just talking about the existing harms that are there, which is sort of, do you see new challenges that are coming, or are these the existing challenges that exist already and they're just being supercharged or being provided in a faster pace and more easily accessible to people through AI? So, and I'd like sort of Shiva to sort of step in on this, because very interestingly, he works, hello sir, thank you for joining. He works in helping organizations doing fraud and fraud analytics. We'd love to hear from you.
Hello. Hello. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So in Neural Defend, we are closely working with enterprise and platforms where deepfakes are not theoretical. You people know that deepfakes are causing issues, but major industries like e-KYC, video verification, video conferencing platforms, where these kind of attacks are already happening. Previously, for the verification, people use as liveness whether the person sitting in front of the camera is a real person or not. But nowadays, because of these AI, these attackers, like bad actors, are like using this AI technology to create a digital impersonation of the person who doesn't exist, and also using the technology like face swap. What they will do, like they will crop the face of the person from the social media, and they create a real-time deepfake version of them, and creating the false accounts and mules accounts. So these kind of attacks are majorly happening in India also, in the banking sector, finance, onboarding, HR companies, and these people are looking and integrating the solutions.
Got it. Mr. Mohanty, since you're here and you're actively involved in sort of overseeing the environment in which sort of this information exists, in your view, do you think it's AI is creating new harms, or is it just that the pace at which these harms used to happen is now gone up, and therefore you need new policing tools and new tools to sort of regulate the environment?
I think the second part that you said is more true. Harm was occurring earlier as well. AI has speeded it up. It has put it on steroids, as we say. It's become very fast. And with the evolution of AI, especially the generative AI portion, that's becoming more and more accurate. So that's creating a bigger problem. So not only the problems have increased in terms of velocity, they've also increased in terms of accuracy. So coming to the enforcement part of it, it is very difficult. First of all, if there is a deep fake operating around, to say that it is deep fake in the court, it's not that easy. You have to prove it in the court. And then if it is on something like on Instagram or Facebook or any of those giant social media giant platforms, so there, when the enforcement like us, people like us, then we'll be asking them, who's behind this? Who's made this false account and who's posted the deep fakes? We need to have that some background information. Then it is very difficult for us to get it. Either they will tell that, no, we'll give it to MLAT, or their platform policy won't allow that. There is privacy and this and that. So now it's become a trade-off between something like the persons who are perpetrating this, the fraudsters or the scamsters on the one side, and the other side you have the victims, the law enforcement. So how to balance this trade-off, or how to really, strike a sweet spot is our difficulty. This is the first thing. And secondly, the forensics part. Whether AI was used, AI was not used, is very difficult. It's easy to say by looking at it and coming to a judgment that yes, AI has been used, but it is far more difficult to prove it in court.
Well, I agree. And I think we'd love to sort of hear from everybody on solutions going ahead. But I'd also like sort of Bharat's views on this because, being in media, being involved with IFCN for so many years, and now sort of an organization that focuses on this, you would have seen different kinds of ways in which, we users see the operational end, which is sort of when it results in a harm that now needs to be prosecuted. But you would have seen a much wider range of instances happening, which can also impact society.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's a very valid question, and I've spent last 2 decades building a very large media organization digitally, and worked very closely with newsrooms, platforms, governance. What we realized is that deepfakes are not a technology-based problem. It's a problem of provenance. It's a problem of trust. This has always existed in terms of misinformation or disinformation. Even when we were working with IFCN or MCA or on fact-check initiatives, one universal truth which we realized was that misinformation or disinformation traveled far faster than manipulated information, right? And what this technology has done it's simply removed the friction. So now the content has become more real. It can be scaled up more easily. So to answer you, is there something new? No, it has always existed. But what is new? What is new is it is more realistic, it is more scaled up, and it can cause more damage, especially keeping the new internet users in India in mind. Like a lot of these internet users, they're not aware about what's happening. They're first-time internet users. And for them, an Indic language video, which might be a misinformation, can be far more potentially harmful than 1,000 articles of misinformation. So, that is what the worrying part is.
So, sorry, I'll just follow up with a question to you, which is, since you're working on this solution, yes, there are legal and sort of regulatory solutions that we'll ask sir, and, Smriti, your experience would be very valuable, but you're working on a technology solution to sort of try and address some of these issues. So, would love to hear from the rest of the room on this.
Thank you. So I think after working in the media space for over the years and having exposed to this side of the world, we realized that currently the whole system was based on takedowns and requests, right? And by the time you do takedowns, it's not enough. We are missing the whole context because the damage is already done. So what is really required is there a way to understand the technology better and create frameworks of trust, because that is what is ultimately happening. We were speaking in the morning that now trust is becoming deficit and people are losing trust, which is not good for the system, which is not good for anyone. So what we are trying to also build is that can we solve the problem by approaching it in stages of impact and just concentrating maybe on finance or health to begin with, and applying a layer of governance. So when we say that, for example, SEBI has a certified rule, right? So how does that actuate into an online governance? And that is that layer which we are trying to build. So at least one small part of the problem is solved, and then start replicating it across categories. So this is what we are trying to do, that how do we use AI at scale to apply governance layer?
So that at least platforms that want to be responsible can use this tool,
Yes.
run at least some forms of the content that they're running and get a sense
All
of
the platforms, all the clients. So essentially creating a brand safety network or a content integrity network where you can just essentially be able to check that the content which you are consuming, whether it is true or whether it is factual, whether it is compliant or not. And for platforms, if tomorrow they decide that for certain sensitive categories, every time a content is getting uploaded, so before you publish it, you can quickly run through this layer. And in case it is found compliant, you publish it. If it is not, you stop it. So, that's another way to control the whole situation.
I think, love to hear your thoughts first on the entire debate of, whether it's a new or it's sort of a supercharged version of existing harms, but also what direction you think solutions could take.
Thanks, Arjun. Happy to be here. I think I really don't have a lot to add beyond what everyone has said. I completely agree that I think most of these harm types have existed. If I have to sort of illustrate it by way of an example, I can probably go at the beginning of time when, a war like Mahabharat was won because there was misinformation on Ashwadhama being dead, or there were, and as I was growing up, I remember I have very vivid memory of this piece of misinformation that Lord Ganesh is having milk, is consuming milk, and people are standing in front of the temple queuing up to sort of offer milk. So I think I completely agree, no two ways about it, that yes, these harm types have existed. I think to some extent, and this is where I would like to say that, a lot of times we see the debate around AI in India is focused on deepfakes, where we would see the debate on AI and its benefits in other jurisdictions may be focused on other aspects. And that it sort of, I think it's deep rooted in the society, some of these issues. And it would really need like a public-private partnership to sort of overcome some of these hurdles. I think we spoke about media literacy, digital awareness, platform accountability, of course. But I think everyone, the entire ecosystem sort of needs to come together to sort of look at some of these problem statements. It's no easy task, if I may add, like, Sir also said, it's very difficult to sort of prove if something is deepfake. And I think it's a term which has often been used very loosely. Sometimes we often confuse it with manipulated media. Manipulated media has always existed. Deepfake is basically something which specifically uses AI to alter the content of the media. And while like a lot of bigger platforms have adopted voluntary industry standards to detect these deepfakes or the signals that are embedded in the media, like say metadata or some of the other provenance signals, not every AI tool is sort of using those signals. So at times it's difficult also or not possible to read whether it is a deep fake or not. So there are a lot of technological challenges with this technology. But to answer your question in one sentence, yes, some of these harms have existed since time immemorial.
And in terms of solutions, I think, we were discussing this separately also. Sometimes the solutions that are coming in regulations are very, very prescriptive. And they're trying to solve a very specific problem, which makes it difficult for, sort of an ecosystem of AI and AI tools to exist. So, there are these rules that are there where whatever synthetic media you're creating must have a watermark and must be permanent. And yeah, it must be, and then once you're uploading it, then not only must you take a statement from the user that it's not synthetically created, but that you must have technical measures to verify it. Do you think instead of that, we need sort of a broader understanding between organizations on how to regulate some of these, more collaboration between government and industry? Because having very, very prescriptive rules can effectively result in very few people complying with it and a large majority just being outside the net of compliance and even taking a look at it, or maybe end up taking positions like, we're not here, we're not willing to commit to India, we're not in this jurisdiction, and you can take whatever steps you want to. is that and there have been successful experiences in the past, like with ECI and others, of government and industry coming together to actually co-create rules and guidelines and guidance that can then be actually be implemented and I think it's had a very tangible impact on ground events like elections and imposing things like the silence period and things like that. So do you think instead of very prescriptive rules, do we need a broader set of platforms or discussions happening on this?
So, as I said, I think, yes, what is the need of the hour is to sort of have like a more public-private collaboration to address this. You gave the example of the Election Commission of India. I think you were alluding to the voluntary code of ethics, which has sort of worked well for the last 5-6 years. I think there are several other examples, like in the context of frauds and scams. I think most tech platforms are part of this global forum, GASA, which is used to exchange signals between different banks and governments, and to detect cases of frauds and scams and to sort of tackle those instances both at the actor and the behavior level on their platforms. I think when it comes to, say, child safety and NCII, we have collaborations like, maybe I can talk about, say, Project Lantern, where again it's led by Tech Coalition, but all companies, including Meta, Google, they are members there. And again, they're also, hashes of NCII content or CSAM content is shared. And then while it's easier for bigger platforms to do that, it really helps the smaller companies to sort of take back those hashes and do their own investigations and take appropriate actions. So I think definitely sort of look at it from an ecosystem perspective rather than sort of have like only a mindset which sort of looks at, okay, we need to sort of handle it in a very hard-coded way. Yeah.
And so I think just to that point, would love your perspective on I mean, a lot of the laws around this do exist, right? I mean, we're talking about deepfake. It is impersonation. It is sharing images that are non-consensual has criminal liability in this country. So, do you think we need to go down a path of new legislation or new rule making, and like you alluded, since it's been supercharged and it's on steroids right now, do you need better, more collaborative tools to be able to actually prosecute these crimes and get people to justice?
Well, both actually. You need new enactments in the sense that misinformation was already there, as Pallavi ji told. It's been there since time immemorial. But then in recent times, its propensity to spread very fast and the contagiousness of this kind of malware is stupendous. So looking at that, we have not had rules specifically tailored for those. For instance, what we do in case of misinformation today is we use something known as Section 66C and 66D of Information Technology Act. As some of us know in this room, those who would have studied law or would be thorough with cyber laws, these two are not the sections which should be dealing with it. A second option that people do use is non-criminal, by way of tort. That's also possible, civil damages. But in India, that's almost non-existent. I don't think many people go for torts. So what then? If IT Act doesn't have the mechanisms, if civil damages are have not reached the age of maturity in our country, then what? Then we have to go in for necessarily other criminal legislation that kind of cements the cracks. So that's where what kind of legislation is required? How would that tackle deepfakes? Whether you will have two categories of fake or misinformation and AI-enabled misinformation. But I generally, being an enforcement professional, would tend to say that there is no distinction between the two. Using AI is making the offense more heinous is not something that easily will occur to a judge. I don't think that's possible. It's like saying that I'll use a knife and a better knife. Not that way. Or a gun and a better gun. No. So you need laws, you need regulations, you need rules, and you need protocols. That's for sure. Because these are now occurring in an area of gap. I'm not just talking about deepfakes, I'm talking about fake information in media itself. or synthetic information in media itself, which may be an AI enabled, which may not be AI enabled. Now, coming to the second part of your question, do we need better tools? Yes, we need better tools. Not only we need better tools, those tools also should have trust. As you said, those tools must enjoy the trust of society, and more importantly, the legal system. If we take it, let's say, in your Caesar of forensics, digital forensics, we use MD5 hash. We use SHA-1 or SHA, the newer versions, which are 256 and all that, which is. So these are accepted tools. So the court will ask you, have you done an MD5 hash for your Caesar? If so, what is it? Have you done an SHA-1 or SHA-1 or a SHA-256 hash for your Caesar? So these tools have already been accepted and imbibed into the system. So same thing needs to be done for AI as well. Since AI has been around for less than a decade, and to be more specific, for the last 3 years or so. So surely we need benchmark tools which are acceptable to one and all, both to defense as well as the accused. So we need both laws, regulations, rules. We also need tools which are universally acceptable.
Sure. So just on the point of laws and regulations, I think, in your view, do we need a separate set of framework for dealing with when users are interacting with an AI tool? Because that's a personal one-to-one conversation that's happening, right? As opposed to distribution of that content. Like, are these two separate things, or do you think we need to regulate the content creation as well as the distribution in the same manner?
So you come to the fundamental dilemma that law enforcement faces. What is misinformation and what is disinformation? Are they the same things? Because they are being interchangeably used since the time I have come to know. They're not the same things. Misinformation is something like vaccines are bad for health. Or that Lord Ganapati has started drinking milk.
Which my aunt will also say many times.
So that is misinformation. Disinformation is targeted. So it is targeted to either a specific individual or it is targeted to a set of individuals. Look, you know this. You know that Mysore is lying to the west of Bangalore. No, suddenly the direction has changed. It is now lying to the east of Bangalore. So to that person who is having a certain set of beliefs is being manipulated to believe something else or being diverted. A specific subset of disinformation would be the cyber frauds which are occurring. Look, if you invest in this particular IPO, you are going to get a lot of money. So going deeper into the spectrum of disinformation, you come to cyber frauds, malicious codes, etc. That occur in this side of the spectrum. The other one occurs at that side of the spectrum. So when you are talking about a person interacting individually with an AI tool, and that AI tool is misleading that person, we are coming to disinformation, fraud, etc., malicious code. When you are coming to an entire section of society which is dealing with which is being fed some information which is not correct, obviously, which is synthetic, that is misinformation. If you want to know whether the same kind of section will apply to both, I'd say maybe. But generally, for disinformation, we already have the tools with us. We have the sections in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita and the Adhiniyam, and then or the old IPC, IT Act, those are there. For misinformation, not so much. The scope for harm, given the scope of misinformation is more harmful because it is affecting a larger section of society. It can cause riots, public order events. It can cause disaffection. So that's why these kind of rules have not yet been developed. If any sections are there to address misinformation in our law books, I'd like to hear of them.
Sure. And Shiva, I think since you deal with sort of the operational side of this, and then we'll come back to your question because I think, but it can be it will be a session in itself. What kind of misinformation and disinformation are you seeing? And you also have some experience of actually seeing what other jurisdictions are also doing in terms of trying to tackle some of the solutions. So, yeah,
So I like to discuss very interesting use case we got from the industry that we all know that Google, Nano, Banana, Gemini tools, which are free given by the Google. Some people are using this kind of technology to fake the accidents and claiming the insurance. And this is in the insurance company perspective. So like that, there are lots of deepfake incidents are happening around the world, more than till 2025. There are $120 billion US dollar the worldwide has lost because of these kind of deepfakes. So that's why like countries like US, they have a separate policies for the deepfakes. But in India, like we also having the policies that we generally putting the terms in the single term. Like we recently discussed with the RBI, they say like for the video verification, we have the terminology called liveness check. But the liveness is beyond, defects are beyond that liveness. So from my perspective, we should have a different law or new law or a policy that should focus completely on the defects and clearly mentions that impersonations and those kind of attacks. Uh, I think like a defects cannot be solved using one model, one law, or one platforms. Like technology, even though we're creating neural different, we are creating the technology which can able to detect the defects. But the technology without policies is kind of useless. And policies without these kind of toolings also useless. And platforms without any specific enforcements on the defects is also useless. I think this policies doesn't need a binary label, the truth or fake. I think we need a policies with uh, truth infrastructure. So we want to that the fact we working with a different company solving the exact this defect problem that taught us that we want to putting the things together like policies, platforms, workflows, and also AI together to create a one policy, not in isolated terms. So this is the perspective we learn while tackling this defect problem technically, and the policies are behind, and this is really slowing us in uh, every technological platforms. So that's why these kind of defect attacks are happening, and it's not happening like it's increasing. We can say like these kind of attacks are increasing. So if India or if a policy body enforcing separate law for the defects or separate policies or the standards for the defects can be really helpful to tackle these kind of attacks in the future also.
And in your experience, how have you seen deepfakes being used sort of to subvert the financial system? Like, obviously, facial recognition, people sort of.
Yeah, how it's happening in the financial sector, like bad actors are creating accounts where the person doesn't exist. Like every system has a face recognition and face matching with Aadhaar card and PAN card. The thing is like because of this AI, the people are using the technology called face swap. They just swap the targeted person, and because of this video verification and this because of this recent AI technological development, it is very easy to create a the face swap of person, and these kind of attacks are already happening, and the people are really looking and using the solutions to detect it. This is the problem is here. The deepfakes are coming in a different ways. For the eKYC companies and the like the image based verifications, for the video based verification. For the insurance companies, the deepfakes not on relies on the faces, but relies on the let's take a car accident. So they want to verify it. And let's take like the documents, the forgery documents. The person or the creating the other cards, the person really doesn't exist. So they're creating the other cards. So when we talk about the deepfake is not only the face. It's a document, it's an object. Because of the deepfakes, the current reality itself blending off with the new, the older generation and the new generation. I had one interesting incident with my niece. Okay, she was watching the lots of shorts, which is in a YouTube. It's a platform. It's a content consume platform. So these kind of deepfakes and AI generated video comes, and these new generation couldn't be able to identify the reality itself. So these kind of attacks are happening in a different industries in a different ways. Answering to your question, not only happening in the financial sectors, but also it's happening in multiple ways in multiple power platforms also.
So, I mean, it's easy for, say, a financial institution, maybe once they identify some harm has happened, then stop it, right? Like
Yes.
they'll probably suspend an account and then they'll warn the customer. But how does, if somebody wants to then proceed towards actually having the person brought to justice at that point, what are the challenges that you think? Like, you will face, because fine, AI has helped you create forged a document, but that document could have been forged using, I don't know, paint or some other photo tool. So only thing that's it's probably the AI has helped is, give somebody an easier path to carry out the harm. But after that, if we try to sort of prosecute that offense, what are the challenges that you would face if one, that set of actors would be in India, or if those set of actors are outside India, which is often the case?
So, right. So, when we say tools, seldom you will have tools that are completely malicious. Tools can be used for good and they can be used for harm. But then I'd stand corrected in the second part of my statement, because there are certain tools which are used exclusively for harm. Like we have hackers tools and all that, they will proliferate in the dark web, not in the bright one. So tools neutral means you can't have laws catering to tools. You can have some procedure, safeguards, etc., etc., etc. I think Google has it, and I think all other major social media intermediaries have rules for their own for judging tools. So getting tools to be banned or to prohibited requires caution. However, if you are using tools to cause harm, to damage somebody's reputation, or to cheat somebody, defraud, coerce, or to aid in something that is apparently illegal, then for that you need laws. Some of these laws are present because, as I said, IPC or the newer BNS has got specific set of laws. You just have to apply mutatis mutandi to the newer generation of crimes, and for some you need specific regulations which have not been addressed, which exist in areas of gap. In fact, we had a very interesting conversation with Meta, as Pallavi ji is here. So on the misinformation bill that is forthcoming. So what is misinformation? What is harm? These things need to be debated. But the best way of debating them is first bring the legislation into place and then let the judiciary frame its rules around it. Maybe they will accept some, they will reject some. But if without trying we reject it, then it's not going to help. So rules, laws, enactments are necessary. What kind of enactments, whether these enactments are perfect, they need to evolve, will be determined by the course that the judiciary takes on it. Regarding the culprits, there are different sets of operations for people within the country and people outside the country. In fact, for getting the information regarding them, for instance, from Meta itself, we write to them. We write to their legal officer or the compliance officer that you give us this information. We have found this particular website or this particular URL or this particular post or handle or account to be a malignant one. It's not a malicious one. We need to find out who's behind it, who's sending you this thing, what is the KYC behind it. So for that, we have to work quite hard. Sometimes Meta doesn't give us, citing privacy. Same thing for Google, Gmail, etc., etc. So that is very difficult when we don't know who's doing it. And if that person turns out to be inside India, then that divides into two parts. Is that person in Karnataka? Is he outside Karnataka for a person like me? Unless it's a central agency which is looking into or a pan-India agency. So if within India it is easy, if outside India you need several steps and several layers of work to be done. Sometimes these countries will not have any kind of mutual legal assistance treaty with us, which we call as MLAT. So we can't directly write to them. Then we'll have to go through Interpol, United Nations, etc., etc. Sometimes we have a very intensive MLAT or a working relationship with those countries. We can get these people, if they are there in that country, quite easily. So it depends. The answer to your question is depends. Depends on the place of occurrence or the place of where the victim is or the culprit is there. Whether that place is inside the country or outside the country. If outside the country, where outside the country. If that person is in a totally hostile adversarial nation, we'll never get them.
Outside adversarial, I think it also to do with the legal liability in question, right? Like, I mean, if there is a law that sort of prevents you from sharing information, I mean, I understand your issues because you are sitting in India and you're law enforcement officer, but without following certain courses, there are very limited exceptions in which you can share this information, right? Like there is no threat to life, there's no immediate harm, then the ability to share that information voluntarily becomes restricted for a lot of these organizations. And then they have to also then balance it against liability that they may face out of privacy and privacy laws. So, I mean, one is obviously the practical conflict that you face with organizations, but maybe it's also a larger conversation to have between countries on saying that, yes, MLAT says worked or doesn't work, but we need, better frameworks or corridors of information sharing between trusted nations.
That's why I said that there needs to be a trade-off, a balance between competing interests. These platforms that we talked about, for them, privacy is paramount, discretion is paramount, protecting the users is paramount. Perhaps these users are protesting against an oppressive regime, and if the regime gets them, they will be in trouble. They might face legal difficulties and hurdles or extra legal difficulties. On the other side, you have the victims, genuine victims who have been affected, whose money has gone, whose reputation has been tarnished or destroyed, who have lost near and dear ones to these kind of misinformation that has been pervaded through the channels. So it really, you have to strike that sweet spot. You have to come to a balance. Whether the interest of this case, the victim in this particular case is more important, or the larger principles of privacy, of discretion, of protecting the sources, that is bigger. So that depends on it will vary from case to case. That is something that has to go put through judicial scrutiny. That's what I feel. Means generally, it's a feeling of law enforcement.
No, absolutely. I think as long as organizations find a way in which they can cooperate without exposing them to liability, I think nobody is a bad actor per se, right? They're just looking to see what kind of laws would they break in their jurisdiction if they end up cooperating with you. And there's always that sort of tension that is there. And creating sort of better pathways in which allow that mutual cooperation.
In any case, if we are having any kind of laws in this very, very sensitive domain, it should come out as a result of discussions between the stakeholders. And the important stakeholders are the social media intermediaries, the bright ones, not the dark ones.
Absolutely. Bharat, I think, as a former media professional, right, two questions. One is, what do you think can be, yes, there are lots of discussion on laws and regulations, always boils down to this. But what are the other nudges that you think, you think work, both from your experience at IFCN, where products have looked to evolve themselves, as well as in media where, campaigns are there. And second, I think, sorry, I'm putting you in the spot, love your views on what do you think about this entire, misinformation bill, and like, where do you think it can be positive or negative? Because it also has a tendency of, there's a criminal element to it, to misinformation, just slightly open-ended and drafted. And there's always the risk of misuse, because in an Indian context, yes, it's not only what the final judicial outcome is. Often the process itself is the punishment for somebody who's just trying to, bring transparency in an ecosystem.
Thank you. So, I think for the first part, I would say over the years, we realized that, and I like to personally follow the three fundamental buckets of literacy, advocacy, and technology. And we realized that for a large-scale upcoming nation like India, literacy is a very important component. And technology alone cannot solve many things. Policy alone cannot solve many things. So we need to organize more literacy programs where you are educating the end users about both the benefits of technology or the nuances of technology. So
just any specific example that you've seen in your example?
We did two very large-scale programs. One called Sach Ke Sathi, which was for senior citizens of India, and which was about teaching them how to use their mobile phones without revealing or leaking out too much of information, because they're often trapped. Suddenly, they have a smartphone in hand through which they can do financial transactions, they can share personal information, sensitive information, but no one has ever taught them how to use a smartphone, how to configure it in a very secured way, right, without revealing too much of information. So how do you do that? And we organized this program across 30 cities of India. The second large-scale program which we did was just before the elections, and we conducted a newsroom training program for top 10 news companies in India. And the objective was that, when the universe in itself is around you is getting contaminated with disinformation, then end of the day, sometimes even the newsrooms tend to pick up a lot of this information, especially when it is around manipulated information or deepfakes and stuff. So we conducted a very, very strong workshop for these newsrooms, how to identify such information, what are the systems and processes they need to adopt into the newsroom, why they should not rush into reporting. And, as we feared before the elections that Indian elections would be severely harmed by way of deepfakes. Fortunately, that did not happen, right? So
We've seen a lot of like conversation on deepfakes in larger, sort of more developed ecosystem, which didn't end up
Coming
panning
to
out in
India.
India, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, all stakeholders got together, platforms,
Right.
parties, and were very mindful of how technology would be used and deployed.
Right. The second thing is, I would say, for policy formation to take place correctly, it's very important to understand the context and intent. Any policy formed without understanding the technology would end up just regulating or regulating the symptoms, and it will never be able to provide you with the cure, right? So it's important through a structured platform or discussion panels, trying to understand what are the nuances of technology, how can you make it better, how do you ring or safeguard the consumers around it, for which the context and intent is very important. As Mr. Mohanty was saying, that it's very difficult for any technology to extract the context or intent. It is very easy to come out with whether it is manipulated or not, right? So tools have been there, and now with advent of AI, especially in last 3 years, you'll have much smarter tools. But behind those tools, who is sitting? What is the intent of that person? In what context is the information being fabricated? That is something very important. It's not an easy discussion, but a layer of trust needs to be formed. And last, I would say, is the tech layer itself. And I would say that most of the systems which we are following right now are post. And by that time, the harm is already done. Like when we were working with fact checking, we realized that misinformation, the virality of misinformation was far higher than factual narratives. And even though we produced and published factual narratives against those misinformation, the reach of those facts was very, very small. So the damage was done. So it's not an overnight exercise, but at some stage, I would say, the platforms would also need to co-invest into trust frameworks, co-invest into early detection, co-invest into pre versus post. So the more we move the needle towards pre-detection,
Sure.
the safer it would be.
And we have a very little time left, but in case anybody of this audience has any questions from our panelists.
Yes. Can we have the mic passed on to that gentleman, please?
Hi. This question is specifically for Mr. Sivashankar from Neural Defend. I was looking at your brochure and I couldn't help but notice that a part of your product offering is digital identity, KYCs, and video deepfake detections, etc. I'm just trying to understand when you're creating this sort of infrastructure, right? Does data protection and the current law generally prove to be a hindrance in implementation of the kind of products you want to give to your clients? And maybe I can just add on to that question, sorry. At what level do you also consider the data protection framework at the moment when you're designing such use cases of your product?
Yeah. So that's a very interesting question because we closely work with the banks where data is very crucial. The thing is when we working with these kind of financial institutions, so when we approach them, when we provide our solution to them, the thing is in India, the defects are very small quantity, it's not a big, and there is no policy actually. So implementing our product in their ecosystem is kind of very difficult itself. So most of the banks, they need the solution that runs on their infrastructure itself so that the data can be within their infrastructures. And the companies who are working for the banks, for example, like eKYC, the video verification, onboarding companies, the data should be lies within the India region itself. In neural define, we just not focus on the model, okay, which predicting it's a real person or fake person, but we mostly focus on deploying the scalable and safeguards, the solution that which lies within in India region itself. So that's why like we have, when we are working with the Indian clients, we have all the data, all our model deployments are within the Indian region itself. And some of banks we do on-prem deployments that most of their everything will be running on their server itself.
Sorry, just if I may have 30 seconds. Mr. Bharat also suggested that there's some sort of truth infrastructure and trust infrastructure that needs to be built in. So are you saying that when you're providing products to, say, banks, the truth infrastructure and the trust infrastructure comes from the banks or your clients itself? And when you're creating the product, you're relying more on your clients to provide you that sort of infrastructure and trust at each step in terms of data processing?
Oh, that's also a very interesting question. When we are speaking about the trust infrastructure, day to day we are using UPI, so which is an infrastructure, payment infrastructure, and unlike the cybersecurities and other platforms that we consume, those are the infrastructures we are talking. I think we should consider the defect detection not only as a product, but also that the safety layer for each and every platforms, it should be the final layer for the AI securities. Each and every, for example, let's take a mobile phone. Mobile phone is a different architecture, but we need a safety infrastructure layer that automatically filters the AI-based calls, or else like it can detect within the mobile phone itself, like whether it's someone using a real voice or AI thing. I think this should be a basic and the final most AI security layer should be implemented, not as a product, but also the whole level, the security layer itself. Yeah, thank you.
My question is to Mr. Sivashankar and Mr. Bharat, to both. Actually, it is in continuation to the question which he has already asked. Sure. Actually, we are talking about that trust infrastructure and deepfake identification, because this presently, basically, those who are spreading the misinformation or using the deepfake technologies, they are using the basically well-established AI tools, right, which has been trained on a large model, large data model, and with the passage of time, right? So don't you think that to identify the fake in that, we need a model which is much larger than that model, which is capable to handle that processing of that information which has already been processed, right? So how we are going ahead? On the one hand, we are processing that, going for AI in this, AI in this, and now we have to establish that infrastructure for deepfake, to identify the deepfake in this model and deepfake in this model. So aren't we creating the layers of infrastructure for AI, for deepfake and all that? How we are going? I think that how we.
That's a really great question actually, because we are also asking this question in daily, because like more the AI models are coming and it is becoming very realistic. There are for the image generation only, just like Nano Banana, Llama models and ChatGPT kind of. There are more than 4,000 open source models are available. When we, for example, if you are training the model, and when we make it live, it will already become the world, because like day by day, the new models are coming, the improvements are there. So we cannot, in neural define, we are tackling in very different way. We usually created a world model. So that's a self-learning capability that can, that we are training in a regular basis to identify identify the reality. So we don't just classify whether the image is a cat or dog. So we do the pixel level understanding of how that particular media is created, whether if a model is created by, if an image or video is created by some sort of AI, we identify the artifacts behind it. The thing is like the trust layer should be on that level, like just not metadata. If you have taken a photo, if you're creating a system that depends on the metadata, of the particular, whether it's taken from mobile phone or not, that system will be easily, easily will be failed. Because the moment you share the image on the WhatsApp itself, the metadata will be automatically cropped. So that's why we are building a system that does not depends only on the metadata, but also the each and every layers of the particular image, the pixel level itself. So that's how the system has been designed. Our model has also been designed. We came to this conclusion not just by doing the regular startup or solving this deepfake problem. We sit with the multiple companies. We understand the problems with the banks, financial companies, and some of the biggest company. They already lost billions of dollars because of the impersonation on the Zoom video calls. So that's how we track back that, and we wanted to create some AI security level infrastructure, not just treating the deepfake detection as a product, but it should be like layer level. It should be like when it's come to the image at the pixel level. So these kind of infrastructure layer security should be enabled and enforced to the system itself.
So, thank you for the question. I'll begin by saying that let's go back to the two keywords, which is context and intent, right? Because this is a very wide world. And to arrest everything and design a solution for everything at once is going to be very, very difficult. So let me begin by saying that the internet tomorrow will not be governed by who builds the largest or the deepest AI. It will in turn be governed by companies who build the strongest trust ecosystems around these AI. Now, how do you say that? If I have to put it in practice, so in our new India, for example, is largely getting driven by get rich quick magical cures. These are the two hot topics which have been like flooding the internet, right? So the context over here is that I want my better health, but my intent of the producer can be, let me dupe this person. Like this person, he wants to get rich, can I dupe this person? So the intent is not right. Can I create a fix around that? So hence, in our initiative, we just identified only two categories, which is health and finance. And we have started to work around that. Similarly, a lot of entrepreneurs in different companies, like over here, so someone is building around an identity. Someone else would build around education or jobs or things. So it would be a group of different companies, entrepreneurs would keep on working hard to develop different standards, right? And once they develop these governing standards, that is what would sum up to a trust ecosystem. And when I say different entrepreneurs, this is very inclusive. It is also state-owned institutions like the police bodies or governing bodies or the platforms themselves. But we have to come together, and no one can solve it alone. I hope it's not very simple, but I hope it clarifies.
Can we have a clap in the house, everybody? Yes? We'll now capture the moment with a photograph, requesting you all to please come forward, and let's click the picture and call it the session. Yes, if you could come ahead of the tables, please. Yes. Thank you very much for that very insightful conversation. With that being said, we'll now have a quick break until 2:15, lunch break. So if you all haven't had your lunch yet, please do grab your lunch. 2:15, we'll begin our next session. So please be back in the hall by 2:10, 2:13 max. We'll begin our next session by 2:15. Thank you so much.